What's the time now? It's 1 o'clock, no?
Yeah, it's not.
How many are we expecting today? Another 2 or 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have 5 here. You folks feel more comfortable being away from the speaker. That's a Sri Lankan habit. I don't care as long as you can see. But I'm not having a microphone, so I'm not going to be speaking loud. And we're talking about aged care, and you will realize what I mean, huh? You're talking to an old man. Yeah? Okay. Just to start off, okay, we'll kind of do a quick introduction as to who you are.
Nilmini Vidhana.
You can sit down. Huh?
Nilmini Vidhana.
Nilmini Vitana, and what kind of work are you doing?
I'm working for 2 companies. One is medical tourism company, other one is elderly care.
Elderly care facility and medical tourism. Very good. Okay, and you are?
I'm Sohail.
Sohail?
Yes.
Okay, I can't remember the name, so I'll just ask you. Sohail, all right?
I'm Sohail. I've been working for banks for the last 7-8 years, and now I'm taking care of our family business, medical centers and pharmacies.
And pharmacy, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm Kilanka. I'm from Kilanchi Hospital.
Klinos? You
Yes.
came today from Klinos? That's okay if you did, but I'm just very impressed.
Usually I'm coming in weekends.
On the weekends you come to Colombo.
Yeah.
You said Tilanka.
Kilanka.
Tilanka. Tilanka. And where you work at a hospital there?
Yes.
Okay. In what capacity?
I'm MOSTD.
Okay. Make a lot of sense. Okay, all right. You are?
I'm Tharindu. I'm currently working at St. Charles General Hospital and in the medical unit.
In the medical unit. Are you a medical person or?
Yeah, no.
You are also MBBS doctor or okay?
Yeah.
All right. And you are?
I'm
Sarada.
I'm working in Reliance Hospital. It's a hospitalist and orthopedist. My profession is to make the artificial devices for the amputee patients and also support the devices for the
Is this the one at Radu? I have been there about maybe 20 years ago. And I had a very amusing incident. I don't want to make it sound bad, but it was amusing. About 20 years ago, I brought some foreign people who wanted to see your unit. This is 20 years ago. And I forget the name of the person who was in charge, but we saw a lot of things. One of the things we saw was a whole mountain of collapsible wheelchairs, foldable wheelchairs. Big mountain outside in the yard. Why are they alive? They should be used by someone. But later on we found out that those kinds of wheels can't be used in Sri Lanka because the road is not smooth and various other things. So the foreigners asked them what kind of donation they like. So the guy in charge brought the list. Number 1 on the list was 12 wine glasses. So casually I asked, ashamed the foreigners are here to donate something, asking for wine glasses. And he tells me, I said, you have a nice doctor's room, but you don't have glasses. I thought that was a very amusing incident. All right, who are the newcomers here? Who are you? Dr. Nipuni? At what hospital? Army Hospital. Why do you come forward? I'm an old man, see, aged care, you know, we are here. And you are?
I'm Dr. Sanjay from Nashik Medical.
Pharmaceutical medical, huh? Okay, all right. Now, you have to listen to me talk for 3 hours, okay? It's not easy. And everybody knows that my 3 hours is usually 4 hours. So get closer, please. All right, okay. Good afternoon and welcome, huh? And I don't know whether you have heard of me, but let me tell you who I am first, because it's nice to know who told you what, because there is what we call credibility. When someone tells you something, you have to kind of wonder who the person who tells you this is. How believable is he? You know, how reliable is he? What experience does he have? Okay, so that's why I'm putting up a little story about me. I'm a doctor too, but not in Sri Lanka. I worked as a doctor in the United States and in Japan for 45 years. And I retired and came to Sri Lanka and I started this business. I don't want to call it a business because we didn't start it as a business. But now we have to make it a business because we have 1,500 students. We started with 23 in 2002, okay? So, I got my medical degree from Osaka, okay, from the National Osaka University, right? That's considered the third best university in Japan. Now, I'm not trying to boast about myself. I want to tell you these are the places I've been to, okay? Then I went to a place called Hawaii, which is one of the United States. The United States has 50 states. So Hawaii is the 50th or the youngest. It became a state in 1956. It's very much like Sri Lanka. The weather, the kind of plants, the fish that live around the ocean, just like Sri Lanka. But it also got very high mountains, although it's in the tropics and it's got snow. Okay. Not all over, but just at the top of the mountain. Okay. All right, and then after that, I got a master's in public health there, and I focused on maternal and child health. Maternal and child health. Okay. And then I went to the mainland of America. I went to California, which is the most populated state in the United States. It's got about 1/10 of the population of the United States, about 35 million people. Okay, and then my training as a surgeon was in obstetrics and gynecology, and I did some research, and I was appointed a clinical professor at a place called Stanford University Hospital. Okay, it's Stanford University School of Medicine in California. That was in 1985. Have you folks heard of Stanford University? All right. Okay. It's the American university that has won most of the Nobel Prizes. Most of the Nobel Prizes in America belong to Stanford University. Then I was sent on a mission to Saudi Arabia. For 9 years, I was chief of a very big hospital in Saudi Arabia, not for the Saudi people, only for the Americans who worked in Saudi Arabia. Okay? The company was called Aramco, and they are the ones that dig all the oil in Saudi Arabia. Okay? And at one time they had 1.5 million Americans working there. So they had their own hospital, their own schools. Everything was like a little America. Okay? Their own police, their own vehicles, everything was America. Okay? And so I headed the Department of Surgery there for 9 years. Okay? And then I retired and I came back to Sri Lanka, and with some friends we started a school called ACHS, American College of Health Sciences in Kandy, with 23 students. And gradually it evolved and we changed its name to IIHS, International Institute, in 2008. Okay? And today is our 16th year of operation. All right. Now, you folks are here to learn something about aged care. Now, I'm going to sit down once in a while because I'm old, okay? Now, when I sit down, some of you can't see my pretty face, huh? Because this thing is in the way. So, if you want to look at my face, spread out a little bit, huh? Okay, now let's see how I can work this. Huh? All right. Now, yeah, all right, good. You can see the screen now? You can see the screen from there? Yeah, okay, all right, okay, good, all right. Oh, look, the ladies move that way. They want to look at my pretty face, huh? Thank you. Okay, now, the course that you're going to follow has got many topics, and this is a quick list of the particular topics here. There are 4 on this page, and there are a few more on the other page, a total of 8 topics. And topic 1 is what we are going to start off with today, and it's orientation to aged care. And then topic 3, the human body and aging. Okay, those are the 2 topics that we will discuss, and maybe a little bit about topic 4. All right. Now, everything that I say and do is being recorded, and all the slides that you see here will be available on the learner management system, okay, on the Moodle. Okay, so there is no sense taking notes and all of that because everything will be available. Right? Okay. Orientation to aged care. Now, these are 5 areas that we are going to discuss today. The field of gerontology, social gerontology and concepts of aging, aging of the global population, causes for aging, and then an introduction to health and healthy living. Now you can see that the word aging is spelled A-G-I-N-G. In some places it is spelled as A-G-E-I-N-G. Both are acceptable. Okay? Don't worry about old age. It doesn't last too long. One of the pleasures of old age is that it gets shorter by the day. These are slightly humorous statements about getting old. But all of us, at the end of this talk, will be 3 hours old. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions because I want you to learn to talk back to me also. We are not little children, we are adults, and so we should be able to exchange ideas. Now, you may find that my English is slightly different from Sri Lankan English, and that's because I lived abroad for 45 years, mostly in the United States. So I have a slight American style in my speech, okay? So today, whatever your age is, if you were offered a pill to extend life by another 20 years, will you take it? Now this pill is known to do its job. Will you take it? Let's assume that you are age 30, okay? I may be wrong, don't get upset. All right, and someone tells you, okay, I got this pill. Free, they're not going to charge you money. It's going to extend your life by 20 years. Will you take it?
Yes.
You will? Oh, very good. All right. Will everybody take it? Anybody here who say no? Everybody wants to take it, huh? That's fine. Okay? That means we all like to live longer. We all like to live longer. Okay, all right. If you're a 100-year-old mother or father who is functional but not dependent, that means they can manage on their own, and is living with you, and this pill is offered to them, will you approve of them taking it? Remember, they're 100 years old already. Huh? Remember, they're not sick. They can manage. Huh? You will? All right. Okay, you will.
They have a case.
Huh?
If they have a case.
Well, you
Yeah,
know,
we-
now, will you approve of it? Because we are not,
Yes.
we are offering it to them.
Yeah.
They can either take it or refuse it. That's okay. But,
Personally, yes.
but you, as the daughter or son or whoever, will you agree to it?
Yes.
You will. Okay, very good. All right. So it's not only us that we're thinking about. We are thinking about somebody else, at least a close relative. Huh? You would like them to live longer too. Huh? Very good. Very good. All right. Now, if these same parents are in a vegetative state, heavily dependent, and very sick, would you like to give this pill to them?
No.
No. Would you? No? All right. Why not?
Just
Prolonging their misery.
But, I mean, that's one opinion. Okay, well, then, there's nothing wrong with that
they
opinion.
suffer more than.
That's right. But see, if they had no problem, you would have given the pill. Huh? But the moment they get sick, okay, and he used the word misery, which is an appropriate word, because, you know, when you get sick, you can't define it accurately. You know, some people have pain, some people can't see, some people can't hear, some people have no appetite, some people can't control their bladder, some people can't control their, bowel movements. All kinds of things happen. Huh? Okay, so you would not want to give it to them, and as I said, you don't want to prolong their misery or agony. Okay, all right. If you are told that these same parents will live another 20 years and will have their sicknesses improved or cured, will you offer the pill to them? You will, huh? Very good. All right. I mean, that's what I would do too. Yes, okay. Now, the important thing is that this pill is going to cure their illnesses, or maybe at least improve their illness. Okay? Plus, it will give 20 years more life. All right, okay. This pill is coming very soon. All right. You may not believe it, but it is. Okay, it is coming. All right. And I will show you some areas of basic research which tells us what will happen. Now, I don't know what your age is. When I was in high school, I left high school in 1963. Did we have this kind of stuff? We didn't have even photocopy machines. I remember making a telephone call to Putlam from Mount Lavinia. Took 3.5 hours. I had to sit by the telephone and wait. See how things have changed. So, a lot of these things that we see in research areas is somebody's curiosity, somebody's imagination. And if somebody is keen to look into it, it will definitely become reality. We may not think it's nice or good or this or that, but obviously somebody is looking at it. That's why it's in the news. Okay, so a pill like that will be coming soon. When I say soon, I don't think it's tomorrow or day after, but probably within the next 50 years or so it should be available. Okay. Now when I say available, it's not going to be 20 years, it might be 10 years, it might be 5 years. Okay, so I'm just talking about the concept. So we all want to live long, and we all want to live long in a healthy way. So there are two issues there. One is getting old by itself, and the next is preventing illnesses when you're getting old. Okay, all right. Now, I lived in Japan for 12 years, and although I'm a Sri Lankan national, I am basically half Japanese, not by blood, but by upbringing. Okay? I have a lot of Japanese culture in me. Okay? Now, there is a very famous temple in one part of Japan. It's called Kiyomizu-dera. Kiyo means clear, clean. Mizu is water. Clear water. Dera is temple. It's on a hillside, and there is a waterway that's coming down like a little waterfall, and they have guided the water into 3 spouts, and the water comes out through the carving of a dragon. Okay? And everybody goes there and drinks the water. And there is a very philosophical saying in that temple. It says, if you drink from the first spout, you will live 10 years long. If you drink from the second spout, you will live 20 years long. If you drink from the third spout, what do people have?
40 years.
40 years. Anybody else? Any guess? First spout, 10 years. Second spout, 20 years. Third spout. You will die? Very interesting. If you drink from third spout, you will live till you die. All right? Okay. Okay. Now, aged care is referred to by various names in various countries and in various levels of publications, like in professional journals or in magazines, newspapers. They all have different words for it. Sometimes, depending on the word used, the idea can have legal consequences. So you have to be somewhat careful about how you use the word. Okay? Care of the aged. Aged or aged means the same thing. Okay? It's pronounced in 2 different ways. Care of the aged, care of the aging, care of the elderly, elderly care, senior citizen care, institutional care, assisted living, retirement care, custodial care, aged care, okay, and home for the aged. Okay. There are 2 more things that are missing on this, but okay. There are 2 more words that are missing there. Okay, there is another thing called terminal care and another thing called hospice care. Now I noticed that a lot of people are attached to hospitals, so you may know some of the meanings. But the reason why I put all these different words up there is because depending on the country, they use different words because of certain legal implications. And that means that the law or the government is looking into things. So in countries where there is a lot of legal surveillance, they have to use the words carefully. Okay? Now, one of the things I had here, but it has not come out, is nursing care. Now in Sri Lanka, we have a lot of places called nursing homes. In some countries, you can't use the word nursing home or nursing care because it has something to do with the practice of medicine. So you have to have very high levels or standards of care, and the staffing has to be, well trained and various things. So we'll get into that a little bit later on. Okay. Now, looking after the elderly people is called gerontology, and it's from a Greek word which means an old man. Geron means an old man, and logi or logos means study of. Okay, but the word was only used for the first time in 1903, which is only about 120 years ago. So it is not a word that was used for 400, 500, 600 years. But we use things like aged care and old folks' homes and all that. Those we have used for long periods of time. Now, geriatrics is the branch of medicine that studies the diseases of older people. Okay. Now, when you say older, the age is not clearly defined, but geriatrics is the branch of medicine that studies the diseases of older people. Okay? And that is also called medical gerontology. The word iatros means healer. Okay? And from iatros we get the word iatrics. So that's pediatrics, geriatrics. Okay? That's the word. Okay? Pediatrics means the healer of children. Okay? Ped means children. There we are. We have some new words there. Nursing home care, hospice care, terminal care. Okay. All right. Now, here are some other names also. Critical care facility for the elderly, assisted living, convalescent home, convalescent hospital, old folks home, old people's home, old soldiers home, rest home, retirement facility, retirement home, old soldiers home. This goes back more than 500 or 600 years. In those days where war meant physical combat. They didn't have guns and they didn't have bombs and aeroplanes and all that. It was physical contact. And then you got injured, you got disabled. And there was no pension plan, there was no organized system of looking after them. We have some of those today, but in those days, after the war, God bless you, somebody had to look after you. And they used to get together and live together and things like that. Okay? It has now become a major part of healthcare delivery systems in countries like the USA, UK, Russia, Australia, Canada. If you are in the army and you get old and you get sick and you get injured, you are looked after fairly well. In Sri Lanka, The effort is there, but I don't think it's got enough. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough money. But in some of these countries, these are very big institutions, very big institutions. Okay. So now, gerontology, study of old age. We study the physical, mental, and social changes in people as they get old. Physical, mental, and social. Investigating the aging process. Just the fact of getting old only. We're not talking about getting sick. Okay, that's called biogerontology. Okay. Now, when do we become old? When is that transition from being young to being old happen? We all know it doesn't happen like in a day. And so people who study the transition time, they call that geroscience. Okay? Some people study the effects of aging on the population. What happens when you have a large population and there are people of different ages? How does it affect the running of the country? How does it affect education? How does it affect productivity? And does it become a burden to the country? Okay? That's population aging. And applying this knowledge to policies and programs, that's when the government comes in. Okay? Either in a large way, which is called macroscopic government planning, or microscopic. Somebody said they were running the family business. Okay? That's a small scale operation of a big problem. So we have macroscopic and microscopic perspectives or angles. Now, assisted living is the word that is used in Australia, England, and the United States. The word assisted living is not legally defined. So it's kind of a word with which you can do a lot of things without the government coming to tell you what to do. Okay? But the moment you cross a certain line, the government gets very strict with you. Okay? So now these are the different acronyms. These are the different short forms of words you need to know when you are reading journals and books regarding old age. Okay? Retirement home, assisted living facility, aged care facility or assisted care facility, geriatric care facility, skilled nursing facility, special skills nursing facility, long-term care facility, ADL, activities of daily living. Now I told you if you had parents who were very highly dependent, so these are the things. If they can't bathe on their own, if they can't eat on their own, and if they cannot use the bathroom on their own, they are disabled. They may not be sick, but they are disabled. Okay? So those are called activities of daily living. Then we have a set of people called personal caregivers. In Sri Lanka they have a word called attendant, or in hospitals now they have a word called bystanders. I didn't even know that word till very recently. Okay? All right? Now, as we get old, all our systems begin to get weak. And one of the things that get weak is our power, our ability to think and analyze. We may not lose it, but we may be pretty slow, not as rapid as it used to be when we were young. Okay? So dementia is the slow, serious loss of global, all around, not in one particular subject, global cognitive ability. Cognitive means to be able to recognize and understand. Okay? So you have memory disorders, personality changes, your powers of reasoning are not good. Okay? And so there are lots of businesses coming up now saying we can help. And they call it memory care. So there are catchy business slogans to try and attract people to come to you with maybe no proof to say that they can improve your memory. But it's a catchy phrase. And the government really can't get in the way unless you really do something very bad. So this area of looking after the older people is big business now, even in Sri Lanka. But it's big business in other countries also, and we will look into some of the problems with that. Catering to this aging population is big business and is growing all over the world, including Sri Lanka. It is a good business as the aging population is increasing. All businesses need customers. So the longer we live, the more customers they will have. So it increases the customer base. Now, regulations about all this business is not strong enough as yet. But it is getting stronger every day, but it's not very strong in some countries. In some countries there is no law at all. In some countries it is very strict. Australia is the country where it is strictest. Even a country like America, which has a lot of money, the rules are very lax. We'll talk about it later. Okay? So regulation is always lagging behind the pace of business expansion. Regulation means that some body, some agency is governing it, is controlling it. They are the ones who set the rules and regulations. Okay? Most of the time it's the government or a body that's closely related to the government. Okay? So businesses are expanding very fast and rules and regulations are not keeping up. So there is disparate quality, unequal quality. The quality is not uniform, okay? And no one is enforcing the rules. Okay? Now, all of you have heard of William Shakespeare? Yes or no? Yes, okay, all right, okay. He wrote in one of his plays a poem called The 7 Ages of Man. Okay? He was about age 40 when he wrote it, and it was written in 1593. When I was in high school, we had to learn this poem. Okay? I know education systems have changed since that time. We were brought up when the British influence was yet very heavy, and so we had to learn a lot of Shakespeare. Not that it's bad, but things have changed now. Okay? All right, now some of the words would be old-fashioned English, so you may not understand it, but you can get the message. Okay? All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. Players means actors. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. His acts being 7 ages. So he has looked at the lifespan of the individual in 7 stages. Okay? At first, the infant, mewling and puking, crying and vomiting in the nurse's arms, some mother or whoever is looking after the baby. Then the schoolboy with his backpack or satchel and shining morning face, but creeping like a snail unwillingly to school. Don't want to go to school to study, but want to go to school to play with your friends. Okay. And then the lover, the mid-teen years, okay, sighing like a furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow, you're in love. You think you can do all kinds of things, we have all been there, I know that. Okay. So, then comes the time when you have to become a soldier. In the old days, whether you liked it or not, you had to go and join the army. Okay. Full of strange oaths and bearded like a pard. Pard means a leopard, really. Okay. Jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. Even if you are going to get killed, you act tough. Okay. And then you become middle-aged, and then you think of justice, and you begin to be philosophical about life. Okay, and your mood becomes a little severe. Okay, and you become full of wisdom, kind of thing. And that's when you begin to realize that you're getting old. The sixth age shifts to the lean and slippered pantaloon. That's when your clothes are too big for you. Those are called pantaloons. Now I think it's a fashion now to say you're wearing pantaloons. The leg is this size, but the trouser is this size. Okay. So with spectacles on nose, here we are. Okay, and a pouch on the side. Here, I'm carrying my thing so that I won't forget. All right, his youthful hose, the socks, well saved, but too big now for the legs that are getting skinny. All right, and the big manly voice turning again towards childish voice. And it's like, you have no teeth, and when you talk, it's like you're whistling, things like that. Okay, and the last scene of all that ends this strange and eventful history is second childness. We all say we go into a second childhood as we get old. This is what it means. And there's nothing, you don't expect to see anything better. And you don't have teeth, you don't have eyes, you don't have taste, you don't have anything. So those are the 7 ages of man. Were you folks told about this poem when you were in school for English literature or anything like that? No? You never heard of this? No, huh? Okay. This is what we all knew when we were teenagers, the 7 ages of man. So when do we become old? Who decides? Is it the individual or the family? Is it the workplace? Is it society in general? Or is it the government? Who decides that you're old? And on what basis? Is it related to age, health, wealth, power, status, working ability, whether you're dispensable or not, or disposable or not, unable to bear the costs of self-maintenance? That means you become a burden on somebody else. So at what point in this do we call ourselves old? And when did the government get involved in this decision? Well, the government got involved after the Industrial Revolution, which was not too long ago. Okay? Right? Started in the 1700s. And the human being was considered like a machine. Even today there are some industries where human labor, you cannot do without human labor. So you become in a way like a machine. Okay? And we use animals to do a lot of work too. When I was a teenager, we had a lot of bulls, a lot of cows, doing a lot of work like pulling carts, used in even transport, used to ride in buggy carts, and they were used in factories. So, during the Industrial Revolution, the human body was looked at on the basis of efficiency and productivity. Now, if I could, let's say, husk 60 coconuts a minute, and in another 1 year I can only husk 40, then the plantation owner might say, hey, this fellow is only doing 40, I'll get another young fellow, he will do 60. So you will be forced to leave. Okay, so then you begin to think, okay, I'm getting old. My value has gone down. But that's based on productivity. Now this was at a time when the world life expectancy was about 31 years and the British life expectancy was about 33 years. Let's say the average of 32 years. So in the 1700s, people didn't live long. They were dead. By about 35, they were dead. Of course, there were some people who would live till 50 and 60 and 70, but we are talking about the average. And if you didn't belong to a rich family, everybody else was not important. So now everybody is considered important, whether you are rich or poor or whatever. So there is a name, there is a birth certificate, there is a number, we can keep track. In those days, the poor people they basically had even no name sometimes. Okay. So this was at a time when the world life expectancy was 31 years. Now these figures you have to believe because they have been researched on by people who do it for a living. They are not trying to just give you a number. Okay. They have done enough research to find out how long people would have lived. Somebody can always say, hey, those are all wrong, how do you know this and that. But now they can, identify certain things with accuracy. I mean, they are discovering skeletons that are 5-6 million years old. And they can say things like how old that person or animal was at the time of death. There are various techniques to find that out. Okay? So the first country in the world that looked into this was the French, and that was in 1851. Okay? They gave people who were retiring from work, that means people who were working for the government, okay, they gave a thing called a pension, and it says non-contributor. That means the person who's working does not contribute anything. It's the company, it's the boss who gives this money. Okay? All right. Then in 1856, they introduced another clause, and they told the worker, if you want, you can put some money into the fund also. So that way maybe the taxes you paid was less or whatever, but you can put money in and keep it there till your retirement. You got to understand, these are all done by politicians. So there is also, the government wants more money, so they pay you and they tell you give a little back. We'll keep it for you till you retire. So these are things you have to kind of evaluate very carefully, right? And in Britain is where the Industrial Revolution really began, but they were about 200 years later that they introduced legislation in England, okay, right? And in the USA, it was even before England, in 1875, okay? They had private pension plans, and private in the sense that even if you were not working for the government, the company that you worked for, your boss, had to have a pension plan. The previous ones was all related to government work, okay, not to the private sector, okay? But you know that the United States is more or less a private place. It doesn't believe in big government. Although 350 million, you have to have a big government, but they don't care for government very much. They like the private sector, okay? Now in 1935, something happened in the United States. Their economy collapsed. And that was called the Great Depression. You folks were not born, I was not born either. But there was a lot of problems in the United States, okay? Their economy collapsed. And in 1935, after about 3 or 4 years, the government decided to set up plans to help people to live. Otherwise, they were begging on the streets and robbing and killing and that kind of thing. So the government decided to give everybody 100 rupees or whatever for them to get maybe 1 or 2 meals a day and things like that. So in 1935, they formed a thing called the Social Security Act. Social Security Act. And that act is in operation even today. I myself am getting benefits from that because I worked there for 45 years and I contributed my taxes and I contributed voluntarily, so now I'm getting it back, a certain amount every month, okay? The funny thing is this though, that they used and they still use the age of 65, okay? At a time when the world life expectancy was 31. So to get a benefit you have to live till age 65. But you are dead by age 35. So you never even got your money back. So the politicians are the ones who made the money, not the people. Alright. So when you get to age 65, it was almost double the life expectancy at the time. See the tricks that they played? But at the time that you join the government, they say, oh, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, we'll give you all of this. Fine print at the bottom when you get to the age 65. You don't read that. Okay. Alright, now, so how long can we live? The 10 longest living animals in the world. Anybody knows what the longest living animal is? Human, alright, okay. Anybody else? Pardon? Whales, alright, that's not a bad guess, yes. Anybody else? Crocodiles, alright. Turtle, alright, that's yeah, I know what you're talking about. Anybody else? So, now she said humans, okay. So, let's say turtles. How long do you think a turtle lives? 400 years, okay, alright. Whales, how long do you think they live? Alright, now, there is a small shellfish, and it's estimated that they live for about 510 years. Then we have whales, a kind of whale that lives for 200 years. Okay, here's that shell. It looks like one of these shells we pick up on the beach, huh? Alright? Lives for 500 years. Now, how do they know that they live for 500 years when we don't live that long? There are techniques to know that. Okay, there are techniques to know that. Okay, and here's that shell when it's eating, when it opens itself. And this is the whale. It's called a bowhead whale. You see, the head is shaped a little bit differently. All right. So there's a reptile. It's like a talagoya in New Zealand. Lives up to about 200 years. And eels. Everybody knows what an eel is? Anda. It's a snake-like thing, but it's really like a fish. Okay. All right. Here's that reptile. Lives about 200 years. And here's the eel. Lives about 150 years. All right. The tortoise lives about 190 years. Okay. Not all tortoises, but this one special one that lives in a special area called the Galapagos Islands. Okay. There's a variety of shark that lives about 200 years. Okay, here's the giant turtle. Huh? Compared to a little child. And here's the shark, this particular kind of shark, Greenland shark. Okay. Koi, you know what koi is? You get them in these ponds and pools nowadays, in the big hotels and, some rich people's houses. They're carp, a kind of carp. They live about 200 years. And these are well recorded because they belong to certain families. They are like pets. They are kept very carefully. And macaws, those giant parrots from the Amazon. Okay. Here is koi. I'm sure you might have seen this somewhere, all right? And here's the macaw. The Asian elephant lives for about 86 years. So other elephants live for an average of about 86 years. Okay. Horses live only for about maybe 30 years. And we live for about 85 years today, this day and age. Okay? And we look a lot different nowadays compared to how we looked maybe 100 years ago, because we are better fed. We have more food now than in the past. Okay? So now, the process of aging is looked at from 4 different angles. Chronological age, that's just only time related. We just count how many years. Okay? By the way, I keep saying that I'm an old man. Anybody wants to guess how old I am? I won't get offended. Don't make me feel good, but I want to see how you can judge people.
75?
How much?
75?
75, okay. Come on, this is not a serious thing. Just don't try to make me look good. Just when you look at me, when I look at you, you folks are in a age range, where it's difficult, because from about age 25 to about age 45, it's, that range is very difficult to gauge. If you're a young fellow, anybody can know you are young. When you're old, anybody will guess that you're old. But in the middle, it's a little bit tough. So, how old do you think I am? Do you think I look like I'm in that 85-year age room, or less than that, or more than that? Or what's the deal?
72.
72, all right. I don't know whether the ladies give the same number as the men. The ladies might give us a better number. What does the lady at the back think? 70. Okay, all right. 70, yeah? Okay. I think she's correct. I'm 75. Okay? I'm 75. Now that is chronological age. That's just by counting the years. Okay? Biological. That's a little different. It's not related to time only. Okay? Then we have psychological. And then we have social. So when we get old, there are 4 different processes that are working. Okay? Chronological is a definition with time only. Based on a person's years lived from birth. Now we have 2 different concepts we are going to look at. Concept of lifespan and life expectancy. What's the difference between lifespan and life expectancy? These are common words you read in magazines and newspapers and professional journals, but there's a big difference between lifespan and life expectancy. Anybody wants to try? Nobody wants to try. Well, obviously it's not the same thing, otherwise I wouldn't have it written like this. Alright? Lifespan is when you're talking about a single person, one person's life story. Okay? And life expectancy is a projection. You expect to live that long. Okay? And so life expectancy depends on a lot of outside factors. Whereas lifespan is something that you know happened. My father lived for 65 years. That was his lifespan. Whatever made him go to 65, we are not interested. His lifespan was 65. But when he was born, life expectancy was about 40 years. But he died at age 65. Okay? So when he was born, they expected him to live only till age 40. But he lived till age 65. Okay? So the life expectancy will depend on a lot of things, like did you get sick, did you get enough nutrition, did you have an accident along the way, various other things will affect life expectancy. So when you say life expectancy, now today there'll be, let's say 100 babies born today in Colombo, they'll say the life expectancy of this baby is 85 years. We don't know whether the baby will die tomorrow, but at the time of birth, the government or the people who keeps figures say, hey, the way the country is going, the way we look at how people are born, how they are born and when they die, we expect this baby to live for 85 years. So all countries have what is called a life expectancy based on various conditions. Now you could also say something like this: I'm age 50 now, let's say, and my life expectancy is another 40 years. That means I may live till age 90 on average, but I might die tomorrow. Okay? So when you say life expectancy, it's a kind of a projection based on various things. Lifespan is about one individual. So life expectancy is usually used when you look at populations. Okay? Biological aging refers to the physical and physiological functional changes that reduce the working efficiency of organ systems. And of course the whole body as a machine, the whole body as one organ. Okay? You know what we mean. Everything begins to break down. After about age 20 to 25, everything is on the decline. Okay? That's biological age. So let's look at how the world's population, what their lives, not lifespan, what their life expectancy was, way back when. Okay? In the early Stone Age, that's about 8,000 years before Christ, BC, the average human being lived for about 33 years. Okay? And then something happened. About 2000 BC, the life expectancy dropped to 20. Weather patterns changed, I think, and there was not enough food in the world and things like that happened. Okay. Then the Bronze Age and Iron Age, it went up again to 26, and in the Greek and Roman time it went up to about age 30. No, it's surprising when you look at these things. You see, people didn't live for too long. Then in North America, okay, the age was about 30, and then during the Islamic Caliphate times, that's about 600 BC, 600 AC after Christ, to about 1200. It was 35 plus years. And in Old Britain, which is 1100 to 1500 years ago, it was 30 years. Early modern Britain, till about 1900, the average age was about 40. And in the early 1900s, okay, across the whole world, 31 was the life expectancy. Okay? Now, in the 21st century, it's gone up to 67. Life expectancy has doubled because, obviously living longer, that's why it has doubled. Okay? Now, $83.7. What do you think that number is?
Now life expectancy.
No, that's not the world average. The 83.7 is the expectancy of a certain country. They have the longest life expectancy. What country do you think it is? Japan. No, it's Japan, yeah. And 122.5, what do you think that is? The oldest recorded human. This is like proven, it's not guesswork. Okay? There has been a birth certificate and various other things. Okay, there are some claims that are longer than 122, but there's no proof. Okay, but longest is 122.5. So, on average, we live about maybe. Sri Lankans live today till about what age do you think? What's our life expectancy in Sri Lanka?
As of now, 79.
79? Maybe it could be 79 to the females. But anyway,
Females.
Females, yeah. Okay. All right, life expectancy at birth in Sri Lanka from 1920 to 2000. See what it is. All right, male-female difference. But look at in 1920 to 1922, the male and female life expectancy was only 30 years. In our mythology and all that, and our romantic novels, we used to think, they lived till 90 and they were strong people and they could squeeze a rock and water will come out and la 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 la. All nonsense. These are records kept by the British. The British kept very good records. Very good records. Okay? And see, in 2002 now, 76 for the females and 68 for the males. It has changed quite a bit. When we got independence, which was in 1948, the average was about 45 years. Okay. Now since independence, it has gone up quite a bit. This is Sri Lankan figures. Now psychological aging includes changes that occur in our feelings, perceptions, our ability to recognize and understand things, okay? And also that we can adapt to change, okay? And our personality will change, okay? Those are psychological aging things. Social aging refers to an individual's changing roles in society. You know, we are dependent and we become school children, and then we get a job, we become a little bit more independent, and then we begin to get old, and then we become dependent, and this kind of stuff. 7 ages of man. Okay. Okay, so we have psychological, social, and then we have a time factor. You can see that the red circle is psychological, blue is physical, and yellow is social. Okay. And as time goes by, the different proportions of each. The circles are drawn to the same size, but they overlap. So it's not an easy slide to understand, but what it means is that some people's mind stays very clear till the very end, but they can't walk when they are age 50. Other people, can run a mile at age 80, but they don't know their name and that kind of stuff. So it's an interplay between these three things. Okay. Now let's look at the bigger picture. Okay. We are born, as it were, with full potential. Okay? This is the big yellow circle. All right? Everybody is equally good. All right? So in infancy and childhood, we go to school, we are young adults, we do sports, we join clubs, we fall in love, we study and all that, and we are generally in good health. As we get older, we come to midlife, we are yet healthy, we have a workplace, we get married, we have children, but you know that it's not like what it used to be in the big yellow circle. Our circle becomes a little bit small. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, this is what happens. This is what happens, you see. And as we get yet older, later life with increasing physical decline, we have a smaller circle. And then, if we live long enough, we'll have a very small circle, and we'll have greatest physical limitations, we'll be homebound, or we have to be looked after by someone. So our environment keeps shrinking. As we get older, our environment our life's environment becomes small. Okay, and you can, this is a percentage of adults with disabilities, and you can notice that starting from about age 65 up to about age 85, this shows that the percentage of people with disabilities is increasing. This is from a British study. Okay? Getting old is natural, although we might find it uncomfortable and unfair. Healthy aging is a blessing. Aging with disabilities is more distressing and we think more unfair. Aging with an illness is an added burden. There's a difference between a disability and an illness. Sometimes it may be the same thing. Okay. But consider disabilities and illnesses as slightly different. Okay. But you could have both a disability and an illness. Okay. Aging with an illness and disability is an extreme burden. And it is an extreme burden to yourself, your family, and to society. That is why in today's world, getting old is not an individual's affair or problem. You can't get old alone. It's a terrible thing. While the number of older humans and the maximum lifespan tended to increase in every century since the 14th, traditionally society tended to consider caring for an elderly relative as a family issue. Before governments and other people got involved, in the old days, you got old within the family. And there was not very much of social involvement in that matter. It was not until the coming of the Industrial Revolution that ideas shifted in favor of a society care system, convenience and population based. Convenience and population based because of the Industrial Revolution. Okay? Population increases led to rapid urbanization and breakdown of the nuclear family. If you study the history of the Industrial Revolution, you will find that the new words began to come up called urbanization. Urbanization. People left their villages and they came to towns. And therefore their living conditions and other things changed. Family structures were not as rigid. Care homes for the aged emerged in the 19th century, the 1800s. Okay? Now, elderly care as a specialty of study we're talking about, that means there was some concentration, some attention given to the fact that people are living longer and they should be cared for. It became a specialty in the UK in 1937. That's not too long ago. And this thing called the Gerontology Society of America started in 1945. Formal studies and university courses started in the 1950s. The Sri Lanka Secretariat for Elders was established in 2000 by a parliamentary act. So we are a little bit behind those other countries in terms of the government getting involved or organizations getting involved. Not that there weren't organizations, but there was no awareness at a government level of something should be done. We had a lot of religious institutions, various other village committees and all that who looked after older people, no doubt. Okay. So now in Ceylon in Sri Lanka we have this thing called Protection of Elders' Rights Act number 9 of 2000. Now, of the roughly 150,000 people who die each day across the globe, about 67%, that is about 100,000 people per day, die of age-related causes and not necessarily due to illness. They just get old and die. In industrial nations, the proportion is much higher, reaching 90%. And what's the reason for that? That because there is more care for them because they belong to a system because of the industrialization of the country. Old age is not a disease and older people are an asset to the community. But older people face a number of issues which make life difficult. When we retire, and I take for example me, I was a very active surgeon. But according to the regulations of the United States, after age 62, I cannot be a surgeon. Well, I can be, but nobody trusts me. because they think like I'm too old to be a surgeon. My cutting ability, my sewing ability, my seeing ability are all decreasing. Okay? So you can't work in a hospital. The hospital says, no, our limit is age 62. For different specialties, they have different ages. Okay? And in countries where the rules are enforced, you can't break the law. Okay? All right? So, when I stopped working as a surgeon at age 62, the next day, I was in a way nobody. I can't do surgery at home. I can't do surgery at the shopping center. I'm out. I don't have a job. But imagine the experience that I had, the knowledge that I had, the advice I can give people, the things I can do. So, that potential that people have after they retire can be tapped, can be used by a country to develop it. Instead of letting these old machines rust and die, we can do something with them. And a lot of the so-called industrial or modern countries, there is a lot of available activity for older people. And that makes their life expectancy and also maybe their lifespan longer, because it's not as if they are blank. Take me. I retired at about age 62. I decided to come to Sri Lanka and start training nurses. And I'm age 75 chronologically, but my own estimate of my own functional ability and my physiology, I feel I'm maybe about age 60. Now, how did I get that age? Not by any magic calculation, but I look at other people around. I say, that guy is age 60, that guy is age 60, and then I can do all what they're doing. So, I may be 75, but I'm functioning at a much younger age. I don't know whether I can outperform some of you, I'm sure, in certain ways. Well, I have a slight advantage over you. They may have told you about it when they introduced me, but I used to be a big-time athlete. I used to be a big-time runner. And today, I run. This morning, I ran 3 miles. And I can do 3 miles now in about 27 minutes. So, that's about 9 minutes a mile. The fastest I ran a mile was 4 minutes, 8 seconds. That was when I was age 18. So I have, in a way, kept my physiology active. So, my father died when he was age 60. I have now outlived my father by 15 years. All his brothers and sisters died between 60 and 65. So I have outlived that family by about 10 years. But my mother's family, they averaged about age 85. Now, I'm hoping to hit age 90, touch wood, without getting sick. So I think I'll hit 90 the way I'm going, but if I get sick, I'll be in trouble. So, getting old is one thing, being functional is something else, getting sick is something else. Now, when you get old, is this a personal, family, society, a community, or government responsibility? If you look at the animals, and you either believe or you think that the theory of evolution is correct, I prefer to believe that it is correct. Animals also have family lives, totally different from ours. But there is no government to look after them. They just die. Here we, in a way, don't want to die, we want to live longer. I told you about that pill, everybody wants to take it. Alright? So now we are living in a more structured society, and so our thinking regarding death is different. All of you have heard of the Eskimos. Nowadays they don't use the word Eskimo too much. Okay? They are called Inuits. That's their own language. Okay? They are Inuits. Okay? It's the foreigners who came and discovered them that call them Eskimos. Okay? It's not a bad word, but that's what the foreigners call them. But the local people, they call themselves Inuits, like the Vedas. Okay? So, in Inuit culture, when an old person feels that they are a burden to society, it's a personal decision. It's not a family decision. Okay? And they live in families. Eskimos live in families. They have their own culture. But when a person gets old and they begin to feel that they are a burden to the family, they just walk out of their igloo, those houses they have made of ice. They go out and they want to be eaten. They want to be eaten as a meal by a polar bear. That's their preferred mode of death. Their preferred mode of death is to go out and be eaten by a polar bear. And their thinking, their reasoning is because the family that they left behind will one day kill the polar bear and use it for food. So they are recycling their body to their own family. In a way of thinking, it's a very highly philosophical approach to death. You know. By dying, I'm feeding my family. So there are different cultures who look at death in different ways. Now I lived in Japan for a long time. The Japanese have their own way of interpreting death. If you are found to be guilty of something that brings shame and dishonor to you or the family or the country or whatever, they kill themselves just out of shame. Just out of shame. And that's considered a very honorable thing to do. Yeah. He stole money, he got caught, and the next thing to do is he's going to kill himself because that's the honorable way out. That's their thing. And you know, when young people in their late teens, early 20s, they fall in love and they want to get married, and the family doesn't agree, they commit suicide together. The girl and the boy, they commit suicide together. And their interpretation, their cultural interpretation of that Has got nothing to do with shame. They say it's better than getting married. Dying together is better than getting married. Some of us may not be able to relate to that kind of thing, but that's their culture. Okay. So, whose responsibility is it when you get old? And what is the proportion of responsibility for each of these particular people? It is like how much personal, how much family, how much government, how much whatever. Okay? How do you spread the responsibility around if there is responsibility? Now, to help answer this question, there is an NGO. You know what NGO is? Non-government organization. They came up with an index. They came up with an index in 2013. To measure the quality of life and well-being of older people around the world. And that's because all of a sudden there was a appreciation around the world that there are too many old people around now. What do we do about it? How can we make them happy? How can we make them productive? How can we make them more comfortable? How can we kind of respect the old people for all that they have done for us all this time? I think things we are enjoying today, we didn't make any of this stuff. It was made by people older than us, but we are just enjoying it. So there is at least a sense of responsibility that we should take towards caring for that generation. Now the index is based on 4 domains, 4 areas, okay? And they looked at income security, health status, employment and education, and enabling environment. See how supportive the community was in helping the old people. Now each of those domains, they had 13 indicators that they looked at, okay? And they came up with a list. And that index covered 89% of the world's older population. And they studied 91 countries that had what we call adequate, reliable data. If you don't have good data, you don't have good information. Okay? All right? And these countries did not have a uniform culture. They were all mixed up, all kinds of people. Because if you have a very pure population, they will have certain characteristics. But that will not be applicable to a null population. But now if you take a country like the United States, where you have about 100 different populations from various parts of the world, when you average them out, you get an idea of what is happening. If you study only the Vedas, whatever information you have does not apply to people in Colombo. So that kind of population-based study. So there are 193 countries now in the United Nations today, but they only looked at 91. Okay. Now, according to that, Pakistan ranked 89th, which is almost at the bottom of the list. Okay. And Sri Lanka placed 36. And so we were ahead of India and we were ahead of Nepal. So this shows lack of income security and low pension coverage, inadequate health, education and employment opportunities for older men and women in Pakistan. Okay, so now let's look at how these older populations are increasing. By the way, what's the time now? 2:30? $2:30, yeah? All right. My goodness. You're supposed to go till 4, no? All right. Okay. Now, if you look at the world population, 1950s, 2000, and then projected to 2050, you see that the piece of pie, that pie segment which is in a gold color, went from 5% to about 7% in 2000 and will be about 16% in 2050. This is for the whole world. Okay? And the population of the world is there at the bottom, 2.5 billion to 6 billion to 9 billion. Okay? Now this older people, we are talking about 65 plus, will be people who will become dependent. Now this is a study from New Zealand to show that when you look at how much the government is spending annually for health care, more and more is being spent on looking after the old people. From 28%, it went to 40%, and is estimated to go up to 62%. That's from the budget assigned to healthcare. Okay? So they are going to take more money from us. Okay? Now, this is a map of the world showing the median age. When you say median, the closest you can think of is like an average, okay? And it shows the population of the different countries with their average populations. If you look at the age 30 to 40, this is from the year 2011, this is about now 8 years old. 8 years, not 80, 8 years old. You can see that the black looking countries, you can see Europe, see Canada, their average age was somewhere between 40 and 50, let's say it's 45. The other countries which are in red, 30 and 35, those are the countries, that population is the one that will begin to get dependent in another 10 or 15 or 20 years. So this shows that the so-called industrially advanced countries or the developing countries are going to have the problem. Now this is going to be like an examination question you will get later on. This is to look at populations and how they get old. There are 4 stages. If you look at this drawing, this is called a population pyramid. It's called a population pyramid. Some of you may have studied this somewhere else. But you see on the left side, you have it looking more like a triangle. There's a wide base which kind of curves a little bit and then goes straight up. And according to this, if you look at the very top, the age probably is about age 70 or so, somewhere around there. Okay. Now as you see stage 2, you see that from being slightly narrow and curved at the bottom, it begins to be more like a real triangle. And then stage 3, you notice that the shape is like half an oval kind of thing. The top is rounded but the bottom is yet a little bit broader. If you look at stage 4, the bottom is contracting and the middle stays pretty stable. When the bottom is contracting, it means no new people are coming into the system, and the older people have to depend on the younger people to support them. And this is how the pyramid changes with time from 1950 to 2050. The one in the middle is about the year 2000. Okay. You see that the shape changes from being a pyramid to being something like a kite. These are different shapes with different descriptions. Okay. Now this is from Japan, okay, where people are living longer, and you can see on the right side that the top is much broader than the bottom. The Japanese population is basically shrinking. All right, and they were not like that in the 1950s. I went to Japan in 1964, okay, when it was more like a triangle. This will be on the Moodle, so don't get too alarmed. Okay. I wonder what this is supposed to mean. I forget now. See, I'm getting old. 21. Okay. They're talking about the sex ratio. Okay, the proportion of men and women in a population. You can see that in the year 2001, there were 97.9, you can say, 98 males per 100 females. You can say that's about like maybe equal, huh? Almost. And they're projecting in another 100 years that it will be down to 93. There will be 93 males for every 100 women. Now, I'm bringing in that not to look at the individual figures, but there is a major situation when government regulations come into being. Now, you know that China had what is called a one-child policy till about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And if you have one child, you don't know whether it's going to be a boy or a girl, although they could. And now they're finding that caused a big change in the population ratio. There are a lot of boys because they prefer to have a boy, not enough girls. So if there is not enough girls, then there is going to be no next generation. So now they have reversed the whole idea. So the sex ratio is very important. And in some countries now, the sex ratio is highly affected because of, what do you think? What do you think the biggest cause is? War? Is that what you said? War? Well, you're right in a way, because the men are the ones who die, not necessarily the women, the ones who go to war. But there is another factor, which is migration, especially for employment. Seems as if more women migrate to work rather than men. And that creates a lot of social disturbances in the country, within the country. But the women go out and the men are at home, and there are no new people being born. Okay? So migration is one, and as you said, war is another one. Okay? pace of aging. You have to be very clever with math to figure this one out. But in the rate of change, we're talking about a rate of change. You can see, look at Japan. They are getting older very fast. They're getting older very fast. The others are behind, but they are all getting old. You can see the trend is going up. Okay? The rate is going up. Now if you take Canada, they picture this in a different way. The portion of Canadian population 65 and over, in 2030 it will be 20%. In 1990 it was 12%. Okay? These are the older people. Now, California, where I lived for a long time, if you look at the left side, which says the year 2000, and then they project it up to the year of 2050, and now it's almost 2020, you can see that the brown bars at the top of the colored portions there, that portion is getting to be more and more. The brown areas are people over the age of 85, not 65, but 85. And you can see that the 65 to 74, they are staying about the same, but the older people are living longer. They are living longer. So that's why that segment is getting bigger. Okay? Within only 10 years, there will be 1 billion older people all over the world. And this was in 2011. This projection was made in 2011. So the older people are kept alive because the younger people are working and paying the government money for the government to look after the older people. So we see that if there are no younger people, they have to work harder or do something more to support an older person. So in 1990 there were almost 6 people, 5.8 people who could support one older person. And in 2025, which is not too far away, 2 people will have to support one old person. And right now, about the year 2000, 4 people are working to support one older person. Okay? This is a cartoon from China. It shows that the older people are being supported by a smaller and smaller number of younger people, because the whole world is getting old. And this is the estimate of the world's population. You can see from about 10,000 BC, when the population of the world was probably about 1 million, This was 10,000 years ago. Today we are close to 9 billion. 7.5 billion. And they project that it will be about 9 billion by 2050. Okay? So we are seeing human beings on earth in numbers that we have never seen before. We are seeing older people in the world like we've never seen before, and we are now discovering new things about old age that we didn't know before. New illnesses. We are getting more and more information how we are getting old. The process of getting old. We now know it because there are more people to study. 50, 60 years ago, we didn't have enough old people to kind of get information. So we will look a little bit into how we got this thing going. Okay. Population projections. There are 3 patterns of population growth. You can say high growth, medium growth, and low growth. But whatever way you look at it, the population is increasing. Okay. All right. Now, We'll take a little break, huh? What's the time now? 2:45. Okay. All right. Let's take a 5-minute break or 10-minute break. You want to go to the restroom maybe, or stretch yourself a little bit. Hello, is that Kamalini? Kamalini, this is Nihal. Did you get my email? Yeah, the moment you called, I sent, but then the same email address that I had sent it to before. No, it's something like KITTS or KTSS 77. Wait a minute, 3 sevens or 4 sevens? I think my thing says 4 sevens. Maybe, but what I'm saying is that's where I sent it to originally, the thing. And what I did was also I sent a message saying I'm going to be at the school today, and that's where I'm calling from right now. And I'm taking a little break in between my lecture here, and I will be here till about 4:15 or so. I don't know whether you are in a ready state to come to bring that stuff and hand it over to the pharmacy while I'm here. Because I'll be here till about 4:15, and I'm going to start my lecture again in about another 5 minutes, and I can't take any calls after that. So, okay, all right, that's fine. So then I will. So that means my email address that I had. Okay, tell it to me again. Let me write it down so that there will be no mistake. Just a minute. Okay, tell me what it is. KTI TISS 3 sevens, huh? All right, at Gmail, huh? Okay, all right, I'll send it this evening, huh? Okay, all right. Another day, all right, okay, all right. You don't sound too good. I don't know what your voice is. Okay, I'm sorry about that. All right, okay, bye. Everything is working out okay, but they went out for a break and they haven't come back. It's overtime. Where would they be? At the coffee shop? At the
They went to canteen.
canteen, huh? Why don't you go down there and tell them the doctor is waiting for you or something like that? I didn't know that. I didn't.
This time 4
Huh?
This classic time 4
Till 4, yes, but I'll probably go till about 4:15. Is that okay with you? I didn't know that the cafeteria was open because they brought me a cup of tea. There they are coming. Yeah, wondering where you folks went. I was thinking of calling the police. Okay, now, everybody's not here, but I'm going to start anyway. Okay, now, earlier we were talking about populations and how they age and all that. Now, we're going to look at healthy aging. How can we get old without getting sick? And then what are the indicators, what are the little clues we get that a population is getting old? How do we figure that out? Instead of only looking at how old they are by birth certificates or the census, by just observations, how can you say that a certain population is considered old? Okay, now to live longer or to live healthier, they look at what the influences are on aging, and they look at exercise, social activity, diet, genes, and these are like hobbies, your interests, what keeps you occupied, what keeps your mind working, okay? All these are considered important. Now you might think that the genes are, that's the blueprint with which you are born. And just like everything else, we have a certain amount of information today about what genes can do or cannot do, but the new research shows that even genes now can be controlled. Genes can be controlled, so that the blueprint that you are born with need not be the blueprint that you will die with. Okay, it's like a building, it's coming up according to the blueprint. All of a sudden you come to the 4th floor or 5th floor, and then you say, oh no, I want to have a swimming pool here, or I want to have an auditorium here, or I want to have a dance floor here. It was not in the original plan, but you can now introduce it. So that's called gene editing, gene technology, which is actively going on at the moment. So even the influences of genes, at one time we thought that's fixed, you can't change it. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, we can. You know that in the plant kingdom they talk a lot about GMO, genetically modified organisms or organs or fruits, flowers and various other things. That's basically altering the genes. It's basically altering the genes. And it's happening big time in the plant world. So it's only a matter of time before it happens in the animal world. In fact, it is already happening in the animal world. But it has not come to the human level as yet. Pretty soon it will come. And that pill I was telling you about, that's where it's going. Okay. So when you look at an aging population, what are the things you can observe? Now these are the things you can observe in so-called, what we call the advanced countries or Western countries today. Okay. They are the ones whose population is shrinking, their older population is increasing. Now you look at them and you see that in those countries, family planning, which at one time in the early 1940s, 50s, 60s was the big thing. All over the world, we are having too many people. You have to try and control the size of your family, and then your income will be distributed among fewer children. They will live better, all kinds of theories. Okay, and so we went into family planning, and today family planning is like a commonly accepted thing, and people talk about it. When I was a teenager and all that, my gosh, talking about contraception was like, it was not accepted. You don't talk about it. So contraception is very common, and there are different forms of contraception. This is now very widely used. Then, as we can notice, even in Sri Lanka, there are changing attitudes. You remain single, you marry later, you have fewer children, you are more interested in having a professional career, and you therefore end up maybe being richer. You have more control of your income. Okay, so as populations, one of the reasons for populations aging is this kind of change in attitude. Then we are living, I don't know whether it's a healthy environment or not, but at the moment we feel all the advanced countries, their environments are improving. The air they breathe is better, the water they drink is cleaner. They have quicker access to health care rather than waiting for it to become an emergency. And technology has improved health care in many ways. Not only getting there in terms of traveling, but also the gadgetry we have now. We have walkers and we have various other things, that help you to enjoy life. There are a lot of technology that is being used. So these things, the first two things here, they lower the fertility rate. They lower the number of children that are being born. Okay, this one, increasing longevity, causes a lower death rate because people live longer. So when you combine the two, you get a population that's older. Okay. Now, what are the characteristics? What are the markers of an older population? Increased incidence of pathophysiologic markers. Okay, now how many people in the room today are wearing glasses? Only I. But if you go to an old folks home, everybody is wearing glasses. So a simple thing like how many people are wearing glasses tells you on average how old the population is. Okay, that's using thing. Things like that give an idea of how old you are getting. Okay, how old you are getting. Okay. Increased prevalence of chronic diseases, high blood pressure, diabetes, gout, various other conditions that seem to come on as we age. Not necessarily because we did something wrong. It just seems to happen. Your eyesight begins to weaken, your hearing begins to weaken, your hair begins to fall. Okay, so hair falling is not a chronic disease, but it's a sign that some part of your body is beginning to work less efficiently. Okay, we talked about working capacity. That was the benchmark. That was the measure that they used initially to say somebody is old. Okay. Decreased physiologic reserves and adaptability. Okay. Now I was telling you about my age and how fit I think I am. Okay, that's because I have better reserves. I have more capacity that is there, not visible, but it's there. When you begin to function, I can function better. I can adapt to certain things better. I mean, this morning itself, I had an incident which was like, to me, very disturbing. one of my wife's cousin's 20-year-old son has come to spend the weekend with us. Nice young fellow. Little bit on the, I don't want to call him obese, but he's overweight for his age, not terribly so. And I told you I went to run today, this morning. This guy can't, he could run more than 100 yards with me. And I told him, I said, Laidu, what's the problem with you? You're only 20 years old. No, he just doesn't have any reserve. He just doesn't have any reserve. He has not trained himself at age 20. I know what I could have done, but see this fellow, and I thought, is the human race going in the wrong direction? What's this? The guy can't walk fast, let alone run. So that's because, in a way, they are neglecting themselves, maybe, okay? So, as you get older, you have less physiologic reserve. Now, this is important, decrease social capital, decrease social influence. Once you give up your job, a little bit of, like, I don't want to say power, but it's in a way power. The little bit of influence that you had in your workplace, in whatever capacity, you lose that. When you're out of that system, you lose that. You feel that something is taken away from you. If there's something else that you can do with yourself, that's fine. That will be a compensation. But if you've got nothing else to do, you have a problem. A lot of marital problems happen after the husbands retire. They may not get divorced or anything like that, but the guy is at home and forever complaining. Nothing to do. Now at least you have some television you can watch, but if not for that, you're only complaining about the taste of the food or complaining about how your wife looks or how the house is all out. Because you are not being productive, you're not doing something interesting. Okay, all right. So decreased social capital is a very, very important factor in living healthy for a longer time. Increased use of medical services. If you go to a hospital or whatever and you see there are more and more people waiting in line, then you know that there are problems. Now, young people get sick also, but ordinarily when you go there, you notice that most of the people are on the older side. Now, we were talking about middle age, and we were saying how difficult it is to gauge a person's age when you're in the middle age group. But as you get older, you find a large variety of people who are considered old, but some are bent, some are using a walker, some are wearing glasses, some are wearing the hearing aids. It's very different from when you were in the Middle Ages. Everybody was like equal. All of a sudden, now you can see a variety of disabilities setting in. So that's called heterogeneity. It's not uniform. Okay? And the other thing is just the visual impact. Just look around everywhere, on the roads, in buses, at your church, at your temple, wherever, you see older people. You put all that package together and you say, yeah, this country is getting old. Okay? By the way, Sri Lanka has the oldest or the highest proportion of older people in Southeast Asia. At the moment, we are running about 14% of our population. It's about 1 in 6 people are considered over the age of 65. And I drive to work and back, and I know when I'm driving what I notice. The speed at which people are walking, the speed at which they are crossing the road, even the speed at which they look, to see whether traffic is, coming or going or whatever. Everything is slow. Everything is slow. Little things like that give you a clue saying, oh my God, people are getting old. And even when I drive, I notice that my reflexes are slow compared to what I could do in the past. So these are little things that you notice. Okay. So, how do we interpret this business of getting old? Okay, there are positive images related to getting old, and there are negative images. Positive image is, oh, he is living long, he's exercising, my gosh, he's got another girlfriend, my gosh, look at that, he's dressing smart, he's combing his hair, Negative is, oh, he's sick, he's old, he can't hear, he can't see. So there are positive and negative images, okay? Aging has occurred due to developments in better nutrition, sanitation, healthcare, education, and economic well-being. That's on a large scale. Okay, all right. Very little to do with doctors and medicines. Very little to do with doctors and medicines. It's more to do with better nutrition, means basically like more food. Although now more food has become a problem by itself. And sanitation. That's another big thing. Okay. People may be crowded, but they behave in such a way that they don't affect the other person's health. Okay. Healthcare, we have more access to healthcare, that's true. People are better informed now, so they can make personal decisions. Okay. And compared to 50 years ago and 100 years ago, people have some money. The richer may have gotten richer, but the poorer have gotten richer too. Okay. Fertility rates have continued to drop, and life expectancy has risen. Life expectancy at birth is over 80 now in 33 countries. Okay. Aging is a global phenomenon, is occurring fastest in developing countries, including those with large youth populations, and poses social and economic challenges to the workforce, which can be overcome with the right set of policies to equip individuals, families and societies to address these challenges and to reap its benefits. Now, let's look at biological aging a little bit. Why do our cells get old? There is a thing called a biological clock, which is ill-defined, but we say, yeah, mankind is supposed to live for 80 years, okay, all right, so maybe age 40 is called middle age. This kind of general description about the time, the lifespan, okay. All right, now there are two major theories. Remember, all these ideas start as theories till they are either proven or disproven, or till they get some respectability. Okay? So there's one set of theories called programmed aging. It's like the genes I told you, the blueprint of you're born with that, that's it, that's the way it's going to go. Okay? And there are other theories that say no, that's not how it goes. It goes because something gets damaged, and the more damage there is, the faster you get old. So there are people looking at aging from different angles and at different levels. The damage theories emphasize environmental assaults to living organisms that induce damage at various levels as the cause of aging. And at what levels? Does it affect the whole organism? Does it involve individual organs, individual cells, or maybe even things inside the cell? 100 years ago, we couldn't see inside a cell. Today, we are seeing too many stuff, we don't know what to do with them. There's so many new things we are seeing inside cells that we didn't know. Okay. So there are 3 or 4 main pathways that have been looked at. I'm not going to get into those pathways at the moment, I'll get to them in a little while. Here are 2 videos that I have put at the bottom. I'll show one of them at least today. But the research that is going on at the moment to show where we will be in another 50 years, we won't believe it. Okay. There are some who are predicting that we will be able to live maybe till about 500 or 600 years. Now you might think, oh, what a joke. But this was a joke too 50 years ago. All right, okay. Here's a cell. Now I'm sure that most of you did biology when you were in school. The magnifying glass was kind of discovered or invented in 1670. And that's what an animal called the amoeba, the smallest animal known at the time, looked like. It's just one blob with almost like nothing else that you could see inside. Okay, but the electron microscope was invented in 1940, and you see what that showed us. Inside the cell there are millions of other little organs. They are called organelles, and each one of these organelles has a very specific function. Okay. So up till about 100 years ago, we thought that an atom was the smallest particle of matter. Today the atom is thought to be a world of its own, full of subatomic particles, electrons, protons, neutrons, all kinds of trons. Okay? And they are yet discovering more. So it is with the cell, or animals, plant cells or animal cells. The cell now has organelles, each with its own substructure and function. We usually think that infinity is something big and far away, going that way. Infinity also goes the other way. You can keep going down and down and looking smaller and smaller, and there's no end to it. Okay, so we really don't know exactly how far this way or that way we can go. So now we are talking about a thing called nanotechnology. Nano means 1/1000th of a meter. And today we have things we can do inside cells using bacteria, using viruses that can go in and do work for us. They can make medicines for us, and they can cure certain illnesses for us and all that. Okay? And the word nano was only invented in 1960. So things are changing so fast. So here's a newer version of a general cell. Each one of those little things that you can see inside there is a world of its own. And each one of them contributes to some aspect of aging. Okay? Now, here's another look at what a cell looks like. I'm assuming that you folks know something about cells. If you are not, then you have to go and do some reading. Okay? What I'm going down to here is this thing called the nucleus, which is shown here. This is the cell. Inside the cell is the nucleus, and inside the nucleus you get these things called chromosomes, and if you look at the chromosomes carefully, they have two strands of DNA joined together with little what we call amino acids. Here there are 4 amino acids that are there between the two. And so now we are seeing things we could not even dream about 50, 60 years ago. And genes are all at this level. And so we can now control all that, and therefore in a way maybe we can control aging. Okay. Here's another picture of what the chromosome looks like and what it can be further expanded and looked into. Okay. All right. So here are the 3 major theories about aging. either the chromosomes change, and that's called mutation, or the cell can't handle the waste matter that accumulates, therefore it begins to affect the working of the cell, or it's just wear and tear. It's like a mechanical part in a car, something keeps turning and the band gets thinner and thinner, and then it stops, and then the motor stops working. Okay, so those are the three major approaches that we have. Okay, now let's look at a video for a short while to show what this is all about. Oh, let me see, I hope I can handle this. Okay, then I go here, and then I go to video, and then I go to this one. Can you hear that?
Of aging. This is a dream of the ages, but scientists have for a long time thought this was just never going to be possible. They thought, you just wear out, there's nothing you can do about it, kind of like an old shoe. But if you look at nature, you see that different kinds of animals can have really different lifespans. Now these animals are different from one another because they have different genes. So that suggests that somewhere in this gene, somewhere in the DNA, are genes for aging. Genes that allow them to have different lifespans. So if there are genes like that, then you can imagine that if you could change one of the genes in an experiment, an aging gene, then you could slow down aging and extend lifespan. And if you could do that, then you could find the genes for aging. And if they exist and you can find them, then maybe one could eventually do something about it. So we set out to look for genes that control aging. And we didn't study any of these animals. Instead, we studied a little tiny roundworm called C. elegans, which is just about the size of a comma in a sentence. And we're really optimistic that we could find something because there had been a report of a long-lived mutant. So we started to change genes at random, looking for long-lived animals, and we were very likely to find that mutations that damage one single gene, called DAF2, double the lifespan of the little worm. So you can see in black, after a month, they're very short-lived, that's why we like to study them for studies of aging. In black, after a month, the normal worms are all dead. But at that time, most of the mutant worms are still alive, and it isn't until twice as long that they're all dead. And now I want to show you what they actually look like in this movie here. So the first thing you're going to see is the normal worm when it's about college student age, young adult. It's quite a cute little fellow. And next you're going to see the long-lived mutant when it's young. So this animal is going to live twice as long. Is it miserable? It doesn't seem to be. It's very active. You can't tell the difference, really. And they can be completely fertile, have the same number of progeny as the normal worms do. Now get out your handkerchiefs here. You're going to see in just 2 weeks, the normal worms are old. You can see the little head moving down at the bottom there, but everything else is just lying there. The animal's clearly in the nursing home. And if you look at the tissues of the animal, they're starting to deteriorate. Even if you've never seen one of these little C. elegans, which probably most of you haven't seen one, you can tell they're old. Isn't that interesting? So there's something about aging that's kind of universal. And now here is the DAF2 mutant. One gene is changed out of 20,000, and look at it, it's the same age, but it's not in a nursing home. It's going skiing. So it's aging, actually. This is what's really cool. It's aging more slowly. It takes this worm 2 days to age as much as the normal worm ages in 1 day. And when I tell people about this, they tend to think of maybe a 90 or 80 or 90-year-old person who looks really good for being 90 or 80, but it's really more like this. Suppose let's say you're a 30-year-old guy, or 30 in your 30s, and you're a bachelor, and you're dating people, and you meet someone that you really like, you get to know her, and you're in a restaurant, and you say, well, how old are you? She says, I'm 60. That's what it's like. And you would never know. You would never know until she told you. So what is the DAF2 gene? Well, as you know, genes, which are part of the DNA, they're instructions to make a protein that does something. And the DAF2 gene encodes a hormone receptor. So what you see in the picture there is a cell with a hormone receptor in red punching through the edge of the cell. So part of it is like a baseball glove. Part of it's on the outside, and it's catching the hormone as it comes by in green. And the other part is on the inside where it sends signals into the cell. Okay, so what is the DAF2 receptor telling the inside of the cell? I just told you that if you make a mutation in the DAF2 gene so that you get a receptor that doesn't work as well, the animal lives longer. So that means that the normal function of this hormone receptor is to speed up aging. That's what that arrow means. It speeds up aging. It makes it go faster. So it's like the animal has the Grim Reaper inside of itself, speeding up aging. Okay, so this is altogether really interesting. It says that aging is subject to control by the genes, and specifically by hormones. So what kind of hormones are these? There are lots of hormones. There's testosterone, adrenaline, you know about a lot of them. These hormones are similar to hormones that we have in our bodies. The DAF2 hormone receptor is very similar to the receptor for hormone insulin and IGF-1. Now you've all heard of at least insulin. Insulin is a hormone that promotes the uptake of nutrients into your tissues after you eat a meal. And the hormone IGF-1 promotes growth. So these functions were known for these hormones for a long time, but our studies suggested that maybe they have a third function that nobody knew about. Maybe they also affect aging. And it's looking like that's the case. So after we made our discoveries with little C. elegans, people who worked on other kinds of animals started asking if we make the same DAF2 mutation, the hormone receptor mutation, in other animals, will they live longer? And that is the case in flies. If you change this hormone pathway in flies, they live longer, and also in mice. And mice are mammals like us. So it's an ancient pathway because it must have arisen a long time ago in evolution, so such that it still works in all these animals. And they also, the common precursor, also gave rise to people. So maybe it's working in people the same way, and there are hints of this. So for example, there's one study that was done in a population of Ashkenazi Jews in New York City, and just like any population, most of the people, will live to about 70 or 80, but some lived to be 90 or 100. And what they found was that there were people who lived to 90 or 100 were more likely to have DAF2 mutations. That is, changes in the gene that encodes the receptor for IGF-1. And these changes made the gene not act as well as the normal gene would act. They damaged the gene. Okay, so those are hints suggesting that humans are susceptible to the effects of these hormones for aging. So the next question, of course, is there any effect on age-related disease? As you age, you're much more likely to get cancer, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, all sorts of diseases. It turns out that these long-lived mutants are more resistant to all these diseases. They hardly get cancer, and when they do, it's not as severe. So it's really interesting, and it makes sense in a way that they're still young, so why would they be getting disease of aging until they're old? So it suggests that if we could, have a therapeutic or a pill to take to replicate some of these effects in humans, maybe we would have a way of combating lots of different age-related diseases all at once. So how can a hormone ultimately affect the rate of aging? How could that work? Well, it turns out that in the DAF2 mutants, a whole lot of genes are switched on in the DNA that encode proteins that protect the cells and the tissues and to repair damage. And the way that they're switched on is by a gene-regulated protein called FOXO. So in a DAF2 mutant, you see that I have the X drawn here through the receptor. The receptor isn't working as well. Under those conditions, the FOXO protein in blue has gone into the nucleus, that little compartment there in the middle of the cell, and it's sitting down on a gene binding to it. You see one gene. There are lots of genes actually that bind on FOXO, and it's just sitting on one of them. So FOXO turns on a lot of genes, and the genes it turns on includes antioxidant genes, genes I call caregiver genes, whose protein products actually help other proteins to function well, to fold correctly and function correctly, and it can also escort them to the garbage cans of the cell and recycle them if they're damaged. DNA repair genes are more active in these animals, and the immune system is more active. And many of these different genes we've shown actually contribute to the long lifespan of the DAF2 mutant. So it's really interesting. These animals have within them the latent capacity to live much longer than they normally do. They have the ability to protect themselves from any kinds of damage, which we think makes them live longer. So what about the normal worm? Well, when the DAF2 receptor is active, then it triggers a series of events that prevent FOXO from getting into the nucleus where the DNA is, so it can't turn the genes on. That's how it works. That's why we don't see the long lifespan until we have the DAF2 mutant. But what good is this for the worm? Well, we think that the insulin and IGF-1 hormones are hormones that are particularly active under favorable conditions in the good times, when food is plentiful and there's not a lot of stress in the environment. Then they promote the uptake of nutrients, you can store the food, use it for energy, grow, etc. But what we think is that under conditions of stress, the levels of these hormones drop. For example, having limited food supply. And that, we think, is registered by the animal as a danger signal, a signal that things are not okay and that it should roll out its protective capacity. So it activates FOXO. FOXO goes to the DNA, and that triggers the expression of these genes that improve the ability of the cell to protect itself and repair itself. And that's why we think the animals live longer. So you can think of FOXO as being like a building superintendent. So maybe he's a little bit lazy, but he's there, he's taking care of the building, but it's deteriorating, and then suddenly he learns that there's going to be a hurricane. So he doesn't actually do anything himself. He gets on the telephone, just like FOXO gets on the DNA, and he calls up, the roofer, the window person, the painter, the floor person, and they all come and they fortify the house, and then the hurricane comes through, and the house is in much better condition than it would normally have been in. And not only that, it can also just last longer, even if there isn't a hurricane. So that's the concept here for how we think this life extension ability exists. And the really cool thing about FOXO is that source of it, we all have FOXO genes, but we don't all have the same FOXO, exactly the same form of the FOXO gene. Just like we all have eyes, but some of us have blue eyes and some of us have brown eyes. And there are certain forms of the FOXO gene that have been found to be more frequently present in people who live to be 90 or 100. And that's the case all over the world, as you can see from these stars. And each one of these stars represents a population where scientists have asked, okay, are there differences in the type of FOXO genes among people who live really long time? And there are. We don't know the details of how this works, but we do know then that FOXO genes can impact the lifespan of people. And that means that maybe if we tweak it a little bit, we can increase the health and longevity of people. So this is really exciting to me. FOXO is a protein that we found in these little roundworms to affect lifespan. And here it affects lifespan in people. So we've been trying in our lab now to develop drugs that will activate this FOXO cell using human cells now in order to try to come up with drugs that will delay aging and age-related diseases. And I'm really optimistic that this is going to work. There are now lots of different proteins that are known to affect aging. And for at least one of them, there is a drug. There's one called TOR, which is another nutrient sensor, like the insulin pathway. And mutations that damage the TOR gene, just like the DEF2 mutations, extend lifespan in worms and flies and mice. But in this case, there's already a drug called rapamycin that binds to the TOR protein and inhibits its activity. And you can take rapamycin and give it to a mouse, even when it's pretty old, like age 60 for a human. We use that old for a mouse. If you give the mouse rapamycin, it will live longer. Now, I don't want you all to go out taking rapamycin. It is a drug for people, but the reason is that it suppresses the immune system. So people take it to prevent organ transplants from being rejected. So this may not be the perfect drug for staying young longer, but still, here in the year 2011, there's a drug that you can give to mice at a pretty old age that will extend their lifespan, which comes out of this science that's been done in all these different animals. So I'm really optimistic, and I think that it won't be too long, I hope, before this age-old dream begins to come true. Thank you.
That was something that was first put on this series of talks called TED Talks in 2011. Today is 2018. That research has continued, and now those same worms that lived for 30 days and then went to 60 days are now living for like 3 months and 4 months. But there's a lot of evidence to show that that particular pathway can be maybe manipulated, and maybe we can get some benefit from it. These things don't appear overnight. They have to be kind of looked at very carefully. And just last week, the Nobel Prize this year for medicine went to another lady from New Zealand who showed that this chromosome that we were talking about, that depending on the length of the chromosome, our longevity, our lifespan can change. So why do chromosomes get shorter as we get older? And if they are getting shorter, can we stop that process? And there is some evidence now that you can make it get longer, and if it gets longer, you live longer. That evidence is already there. That's one of the other
Those are called telomeres.
pardon?
Those are called telomeres, isn't it?
Yes, okay. Very good. You are very well informed. Thank you. That makes it easier for me to explain what this is all about. Okay. This lady's English is New Zealand English, so it's a little difficult.
Where does the end begin? Well, for me, it all began with this little fellow. This adorable organism, well, I think it's adorable, is called Tetrahymena, and it's a single-celled creature, and it's also been known as pond scum. So, my career started with pond scum. Now, it was no surprise I became a scientist. Growing up far away from here, as a little girl, I was deadly curious.
But she said pond scum is what we call like Diacevala. You know, this stuff that forms on top of water, like a green sheet, you know, with little bubbles in it and all that. It's like considered, we think it's very filthy, but it's really an organism, and that organism lives for a very long time. And that's how she got the clue.
Everything alive. I used to pick up these poisonous stinging jellyfish and sing to them. And so, starting my career, I was deadly curious about fundamental mysteries of the most basic building blocks of life. And I was fortunate to live in a society where that curiosity was valued. Now, for me, this little pond scum critter Tetrahymena was a great way to study the fundamental mystery. I was most curious about those bundles of DNA in our cells called chromosomes. And it was because I was curious about the very ends of chromosomes, known as telomeres. Now, when I started my quest, all we knew was that they help protect the ends of chromosomes. It was important when cells divide. It was really important. But I wanted to find out what telomeres consisted of. And for that, I needed a lot of them. Now, so happens that cute little Tetrahymena has a lot of short linear chromosomes, around 20,000. So lots of telomeres. And I discovered that telomeres consisted of special segments of non-coding DNA right at the very ends of chromosomes. But here's the problem. Now, we all start life as a single cell. It multiplies to 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and on, to form the 200 billion cells that make up our adult body. And some of those cells have to divide thousands of times. In fact, even as I stand here before you, all throughout my body, cells are furiously replenishing to, well, keep me standing here before you. So, every time a cell divides, all of its DNA has to be copied. All of the coding DNA inside of those chromosomes, because that carries the vital operating instructions that keep our cells in good working order. So my heart cells can keep a steady beat, which I show you that I'm doing right now. And my immune cells can fight off bacteria and viruses, and our brain cells can save the memory of our first kiss and keep on learning throughout life. But there is a glitch in the way DNA is copied. It is just one of those facts of life. Every time the cell divides, DNA is copied. Some of that DNA from the ends gets worn down and shortened, some of that telomere DNA. And think about it, like the protective caps at the ends of your shoelace, and they keep the shoelace or the chromosome from fraying. And when that tip gets too short, it falls off. And that worn down telomere sent a signal to the cells. DNA is no longer being protected, sent a signal, time to die. So, end of story. Well, sorry, this not so fast. Can't be the end of the story because life hasn't died off the face of the earth. So I was curious. If such wear and tear is inevitable, how on earth does Mother Nature make sure we can keep our chromosomes intact? Now remember that little pond scum critter, Tetrahymena? The craziest thing was Tetrahymena cells never got old and died. Their telomeres weren't shortening as time marched on. Sometimes they even got longer. Something else was at work, and believe me, that something was not in any textbook. So working in my lab with my extraordinary student Carol Greiner, and Carol and I shared the Nobel Prize for this work, we began running experiments, and we discovered cells do have something else. It was a previously undreamed of enzyme that could replenish, make longer telomeres, and we named it telomerase. And when we removed our pond scums telomerase, their telomeres ran down and they died. So it was thanks to their plentiful telomerase that our pond scum critters never got old. Okay, now that's an incredibly hopeful message for us humans to be receiving from pond scum. Because it turns out that as we humans age, our telomeres do shorten. And then remarkably, that shortening is aging us. Generally speaking, the longer your telomeres, the better off you are. It's the over-shortening of telomeres that leads us to feel and see signs of aging. As skin cells start to die and start to see fine lines, wrinkles, hair pigment cells die. You start to see grey. Immune system cells die. You increase your risks of getting sick. In fact, the cumulative research from the last 20 years has made clear that telomere attrition is contributing to our risks of getting cardiovascular diseases, Alzheimer's, some cancers, and diabetes. The very conditions many of us die of. And so, we have to think about this. What is going on? This attrition. We look and we feel older. Yeah, our telomeres are losing the war of attrition faster. And those of us who feel youthful longer. Turns out our telomeres are staying longer for longer periods of time, extending our period of feelings of youthfulness and reducing the risks of all we most dread as the birthdays go by. Okay, seems like a no-brainer. Now, if my telomeres are connected to how quickly I'm going to feel, get old, if my telomeres can be renewed by my telomerase, then all I have to do to reverse the signs and symptoms of aging is figure out where to buy that Costco-sized bottle of grade A, organic, fair trade telomerase. Right? Great, problem solved. Not so fast. I'm sorry. Alas, don't stop it. Okay, and why? It's because human genetics has taught us that when it comes to our telomerase, we humans live on a knife edge. Okay, simply put, yes, nudging up telomerase does decrease the risks of some diseases, but it also increases the risks of certain rather nasty cancers. So, even if you could buy the Costco-sized bottle of telomerase, and there are many websites marketing such dubious products. The problem is you could nudge up the risks of cancers. You don't want that. Now, don't worry, because well, I think it's kind of funny that right now, many of us may be thinking, I'd rather be like pond scum. There is something for us humans in the story of telomeres and their maintenance, but I want to get one thing clear. It isn't about enormously extending human lifespan or immortality. It's of your life. When you're free of disease, you're healthy, you're productive, you're successfully enjoying life. Disease span, the opposite of health span, is the time of your life spent feeling old, sick, and dying. So the real question becomes, okay, if I can't cancel telomerase, do I have control over my telomere length and hence my well-being, my health, without those downsides of cancer risks? Okay? So it's the year 2000. Now, I've been minutely scrutinizing little teeny tiny telomeres very happily for many years when into my lab walks a psychologist named Alyssa Edmond. Now, Alyssa's expertise is in the effects of severe chronic psychological stress on our minds and our body's health. And as she was standing in my lab, which ironically overlooked the entrance to a mortuary, and she had a life and death question for me. What happens to telomeres in people who are chronically stressed? She asked me. You see, she'd been studying caregivers and specifically mothers of children with a chronic condition, be it gut disorder, be it autism, you name it. A group are obviously under enormous and prolonged psychological stress. I have to say, her question changed me profoundly. See, all this time I've been thinking of telomeres as those minuscule molecular structures that they are, genes that control telomeres. And when Alyssa asked me about studying caregivers, I suddenly saw telomeres in a whole new light. I saw beyond the genes and the chromosomes into the lives of the real people we were studying. I'm a mom myself, and at that moment I was struck by the image of these women dealing with their child with a condition very difficult to deal with, often without help. Such women simply often look worn down. So was it possible that their telomeres were worn down as well? So our collective curiosity went into overdrive. And this is selected for our first study, a group of such caregiving mothers. We wanted to ask, what's the length of their telomeres compared with the number of years that they have been caregiving for their child with a chronic condition? So 4 years go by, the day comes when all the results are in, and Alyssa looked down at our first scatter plot and literally gasped. Because there was a pattern to the data. And it was the exact gradient that we most feared might exist. It was right there on the page. The longer, the more years that his mother had been in this caregiving situation, no matter her age, the shorter were the telomeres. And before she perceived her situation as being more stressful, the lower was her telomerase and the shorter were her telomeres. So we have discovered something unheard of. The more chronic stress you're under, the shorter your telomeres, meaning the more likely you were to fall victim to an early disease span and perhaps untimely death. Our findings meant that people's life events and the way we respond to these events can change how we maintain your telomeres. So telomere length wasn't just a matter of age counted in years. Alyssa's question to me back when she first came to my lab indeed had been a life and death question. Now luckily, hidden in that data, there was hope. We noticed that some mothers, despite having been caring for their children for many years, had been able to maintain their telomeres. So studying these women closely revealed that they were resilient to stress. Somehow they were able to experience their circumstances not as a threat day in and day out, but as a challenge. And this has led to a very important insight for all of us. We have control over the way we age, all the way down into our cells. Okay, now our initial curiosity became infectious. Thousands of scientists from different fields added their expertise to telomere research. The findings have poured in. It's up to over 10,000 scientific papers and counting. So several studies rapidly confirmed our initial finding that yes, chronic stress is bad for telomeres. And now many are revealing that we have more control over this particular aging process than any of us could ever have imagined. A few examples. A study from the University of California, Los Angeles, of people who are caring for a relative with dementia long term and looked at their caregivers' telomere maintenance capacity and found that it was improved by them practicing a form of meditation for as little as 12 minutes a day for 2 months. Attitude matters. If you're habitually a negative thinker, you typically see a stressful situation with a threat-stress response, meaning if your boss wants to see you, you automatically think, I'm about to be fired. Blood vessels constrict and your level of the stress hormone, cortisol, creeps up and then it stays up. And over time, that persistently high level of the cortisol actually dams down your telomerase, not good for your telomeres. On the other hand, if you typically see something stressful as a challenge to be tackled, then blood flows to your heart and to your brain, and you experience a brief and energizing spike of cortisol. Thanks to that habitual bring-it-on attitude, those telomeres do just fine. So, all of this telling us your telomeres do just fine. You really do have power to change what is happening to your own telomeres. But our curiosity just got more and more intense because we started to wonder, what about factors outside our own skin? Could they impact our telomere maintenance as well? You know, we humans are intensely social beings. So it be possible that our telomeres will be social as well? Well, the results have been startling. As early as childhood, emotional neglect, exposure to violence, bullying, and racism all impact telomeres, and the effects are long-term. Can you imagine the impact on children of living years in a war zone? People who can't trust their neighbours and who don't feel safe in their neighbourhoods consistently have shorter telomeres. So your home address matters for telomeres as well. On the flip side, tight-knit communities, being in a marriage long-term, and lifelong friendships all improve telomere maintenance. So what is all this telling us? It's telling us that I have the power to impact my own telomeres, and I also have the power to impact yours. Telomere science has told us just how interconnected we all are. But I'm still curious. I do wonder what legacy all of us will leave for the next generation. Will we invest in the next young woman or man peering through a microscope at next little critter, the next bit of pond scum, curious about a question we don't even know today is a question? It could be a great question that could impact the whole world. But maybe you're curious about you. Now that you know how to protect your telomeres, are you curious, what are you going to do with all those decades of brimming good health? And now that you know you can impact the telomeres of others, are you curious? How will you make a difference? And now that you know the power of curiosity to change the world, how will you make sure that the world invests in curiosity for the sake of the generations that will come after us? Thank you.
kind of difficult to understand her English, but I have listened to it about 4 or 5 times. But this is very interesting stuff. You know, we are looking at something through the electron microscope and relating it to our own behavior. Like from what she says, depending on our so-called stress level or how we handle our stress level, we can make our telomeres grow long or not lose its length, and that will then extend our lifespan. And they have now, as he said, looked at the telomeres of like people who have good friends, and they find that because of the friendship, the telomeres of both sides extend, they get long or they don't shorten. So it's not only yourself, but you can influence other people's telomeres. So there are a couple of messages here. First is that the telomere length is a good measure of lifespan, and that the telomere length can be manipulated or altered or controlled by behavior. And the next is that it's not only your behavior, but it influences the people that you are mixing with. So it's kind of a very powerful tool if it can be worked out, properly. And remember when we first started, I showed you those big rings and said, our environment is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So that ties in with this kind of information, which says the more connections you have, the more friends you have, and the more peaceful you are in that environment, your telomeres stay longer. So that's in a way good news. Okay, I don't know whether that English was easy to understand. I found it a little difficult to understand.
But the things are now with normal cell cycle, the telomere length gets short with the normal cell division.
Right.
So it's a process that naturally happens.
It's a process that naturally happens.
Each time cell divides,
It gets a little bit shorter. Yes, you're right. But what they found is that this enzyme called telomerase, if you have, it makes it not get shorter, or maybe sometimes even makes it get longer. Now, see, these are research clues. This is not at a practical level as yet, But we know that there are lots of movements now. For example, let's say meditation. Don't be only working the whole time. Just go and play a little bit. Relax. Listen to music, read a book, or do something. And sometimes we get so entangled in our work, our performance, not to please yourself, but to please an organization, to please somebody else. And then when we stop that work, then we have to try and use the balance time to please ourselves. So in that way, say, hey, if you have a little bit more time, then maybe we can be more relaxed. So now, do you know that in some countries, they are even reducing the work week from 5 days to 4 days. Because now they are beginning to realize that all work and making more money and being more tired and all that is not worth it. It's not worth it. If we have a little bit more money and if we have a little bit more free time, maybe we will have a better life in terms of maybe we won't get as sick as often or as early in life. It will happen later on. So we are kind of basically extending our lifespan a little bit. Now, what's the time now? Oh my gosh, it's already 4:15, huh? I'm going to stop talking, but I want to show you a few slides here just to show you the slide, not really to go over the slide. Remember we talked about that organization called HelpAge? Okay. This is the first organization in the world, a non-government organization that wanted to measure the comfort level of older people in the world. Okay? And what I want to mention is this, that the chairman of this organization till very recently was a Sri Lankan. A gentleman by the name of Tilak de Souza, who is a big business person in the country. Okay? He's a big business person. You have heard of this company called Associated Motorways? No? He's the owner of that. Okay? And he is also, he's given the title Deshabandhu. You know? His term of office ended in June 2015. He is also the lay custodian of the big temple in Kalutara, where the Jacoba and the Bodhiya is. Okay, all right. And he is, into a lot of philanthropy, a lot of donating to social services and things like that. Okay, although he is a businessman, he does things like that. Anyway, so this organization looked at how different countries fare, and Sri Lanka was number 36. Okay? And if you look at these other countries, Sweden, Norway, Germany, Netherlands, Canada, Switzerland, New Zealand, those were the countries that had the best services and opportunities and the what they call enabling environment. That means society was interested in helping old people instead of keep them quiet and say aache kamarata gilla dan nidagandako gilla potak kiyannako, no. And then let's go out for a walk, let's cook together, let's sing together, you're knitting, you're sewing, you're painting, whatever. Okay, let's do more of it, that kind of thing. Those are things that happen a lot in the so-called advanced countries. Old people are not like neglected. They are made to participate, not enforced to, but the environment makes it comfortable for them to join in. So that involves a lot of other things like travel conveniences and accommodations for old people and all that. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to talk about when we have our next lecture, about how services and the quality of services to service old people happen in different parts of the world, and what we have in Sri Lanka. We don't have very much, but the little that we have, I will show you, and that will be part of the reading things that you'll have to do. Now all these slides that I have here, all of them will be on the learner management thing. So you folks have to study each one individually. And some you have to kind of look and read and understand. Others I have put sentences here and there to kind of guide your thought process. Okay? So I'm going to stop today at this point. Now next time, when we are studying those kinds of things, I'm going to show a video that's going to go for about 55 minutes. It's a long video, and while the video is going, we are going to stop along the way to discuss a certain point of the video. Okay? This is about aged care in the United States and all the problems. Because it's only from the problems we learn what we can do. We can also look at how well it is going and learn from that too. But enough funds, if you have enough money, you can make things go very well. When you don't have money, or you are trying to make a profit out of people's old age, which is ethically not acceptable at all. If you abuse old people and make money, if you mislead old people and make money, if you cheat old people and make money, you may be making money, no doubt, and your bank balance may be getting big, but are those people nice human beings? They're not. But that is big business in a lot of countries, including Sri Lanka. But in some countries it's like organized crime. It's like organized crime. Okay. And so we're going to look in a video like that, and then at each point where there is an incident, then we will discuss the incident to see, hey, what does that mean? Okay. Now, altogether I have about 200 slides. So you have a lot of homework to do. Go and look at the slides, okay, at your own free time. Okay. All right. So we'll meet again. I don't know when, but next time, probably in another week or two or so. Probably another 2 weeks or so. Huh? What's that? Not next. I don't think it's next Sunday.
We cover next. Yeah, no.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. My English was not difficult to understand.
No,
my
sir,
accent.
not at all.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. No, I had to get feedback also, so I want to make sure that. Oh, what is this supposed to do? I'm supposed to.
Just keep it there.
The attendance list, huh?
Attendance sheet, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So at the end, we have only 3 people who signed it. No, in the morning, the more people are here. Whatever that is. Huh?
2 left.
All right. Okay.
One person is coming from Kilinochchi.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I was very impressed that he came all the way from Kilinochchi. Yes, yes. And I thought he was feeling a little bit tired and sleepy. That's okay. I excuse him for that. But I mean, the effort that he made to come all the way, you know that we have 2 lecturers in our school. They are Roman Catholic nuns. They are Roman Catholic nuns. Both got master's degrees in nursing from Australian universities. Okay. They work in a nunnery or in like a convent-like thing in Jaffna. They leave Jaffna at about 10 o'clock in the evening, sleep in the bus, come here. They lecture from 9 to about 4 o'clock in the evening, go straight to the bus, and they go back. I tell you, I get so emotional. And they don't ask for money, they don't do anything. They're doing it because of their love.